Post Corporation. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
The honourable member for Windsor West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand today to follow up with a question I had in the House of Commons once we resumed this parliamentary session related to a surprise announcement that was made in my community with regards to allowing the Ambassador Bridge and the Canada Transit Company a new border crossing between Canada and the United States. Mr. Speaker, the crossing that we currently have right now in my region, one of a few, is significant because it has around 25 to 30% of Canada's daily trade with the United States. Now, the crossing is owned by a private American billionaire who has had financial interests, obviously, at the most important aspect, and there has been an overwhelmingly long-standing frustration with the community that has been disrespected on both sides of the border. The government decided to issue an order in council to grant them this new border crossing. And they did so, Mr. Speaker, which is important for the public to know, is they did so behind closed doors where there is no accountability, there is little information that is shared, and most importantly, Mr. Speaker, they allowed the Ambassador Bridge and the Canadian Transit Company to announce this expansion at the expense of our community and some of the members there without even coming down to our community. In fact, Mr. Speaker, it was announced in the United States before it was in Canada. And right now, Mr. Speaker, we have seen over the last number of days, I stand in solidarity with my community of concern as the Ambassador Bridge has been blockbusting, buying up homes adjacent to its properties. It's cost us schools, it's cost us businesses, it's cost us a local post office, it's cost us a number of different things, and there's been nothing but anxiety, nothing but hurt, nothing but pain for decades. In fact, I guess the background of this company, this American institution in our community, can be summarized in one of their communication statements at one point in time, said this: when someone says no, we just look for another way to make it happen. Do we ruffle feathers? Damn right. And, Mr. Speaker, that attitude has progressed over a long period of time, has now been rewarded for a brand new crossing for a bridge that is less than 100 years old. Just last year, Mr. Speaker, it was this government that had to put work orders because of the danger of using this crossing in this facility that was not sufficient for the trade, commerce, and safety of citizens in my local community and across this country and the American side of going forth. And they did this through a cabinet order, no announcement. And, Mr. Speaker, I've been this place enough to know, and I've seen it in my community many, many times, often not even invited, for re-announcements where the government will come down and send members time after time again. Not a single thing to answer questions, Mr. Speaker, that we have. Questions like expropriation, will residents be treated fairly? Noise and traffic, closures, air quality, dust mitigation, what is going to happen with that? The Ambassador Bridge doesn't have, I guess, a history of complying. In fact, Mr. Speaker, in the United States, the owner and management was incarcerated for not following the process in the United States with regards to a public project over there. So this government has refused to come to our community, has refused to answer these questions. And I would ask the parliamentary secretary, because I can't say whether or not the minister is here, but I can tell you that it's likely going to be the parliamentary secretary, sadly today, no disrespect, that will have to follow up on these very pertinent questions that is 30% of our daily trade with the United States and is at the heart of my city and the residents that I represent.
Hear, hear. The Honorary Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Windsor West for his question. And indeed, our government recognizes the importance of ensuring a continued flow of trade and travellers between Windsor and Detroit. It is one of Canada's most important Canada-USA border crossings, and I know the honourable member shares that same priority. But I do welcome this opportunity to provide Canadians with further information about the application by the owners of the Ambassador Bridge to build a replacement bridge and expanded Customs Plaza, and on our government's decision to approve the construction subject to terms and conditions. This border crossing is important to the economic well-being of the local community, particularly to the automotive industry and for daily commuter traffic between Windsor and Detroit. The International Bridges and Tunnels Act enables the Government of Canada to help protect the safety, security, and efficiency of these vital trade links. Under the International Bridges and Tunnels Act, an application must be submitted to the Minister of Transport to request approval for the alteration, construction, and operation of an international bridge. Our review and assessment of the application for the construction of a replacement bridge included significant consultations, including a 60-day public consultation undertaken by Transport Canada. Over 400 submissions were received, and the results of these consultations were published on Transport Canada's website. All information gathered as part of this process informed our government's decision. Indeed, the terms and conditions attached to the approval were established to, among other things, mitigate the safety and security risks and the impacts on the local community and the environment that could be caused by the construction and operation of the project. The conditions of the approval include dismantling the existing bridge when the replacement bridge is open, improving local infrastructure, creating new public green spaces, protecting the environment, and considering Indigenous interests. Our government has always maintained this critical trade corridor needs 2 viable commercial bridge border crossings to provide sufficient capacity and redundancy to support the safe and efficient movement of people and goods through the Windsor-Detroit corridor. We are committed to moving forward expeditiously with the Gordie Howe International Bridge project. Having the Gordie Howe International Bridge and a fully functioning Ambassador Bridge will enhance capacity and reliability at Canada's busiest commercial crossing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Windsor West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the exchange here, but it doesn't get to the root of what's taking place and what accountability we received from the Cabinet. Why, for example, was one of the questions that was raised, were there no community benefits? When the new Gordie Howe Bridge is being built, we have a community benefit program. There's no community benefits happening with the Canada Transit Company and the replacement span that they are getting here. Do they know, and what is the response from the American government? We are asking, this Cabinet, this Prime Minister and Cabinet has asked or demanded that the U.S. to actually tear down this bridge because obviously it connects to both sides and it is heritage on the United States. What has been the response? And is the President of the United States in support of tearing down that bridge? Most importantly, Mr. Speaker, is how is this government going to enforce the terms and conditions when this company has...
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my honourable colleague. I'm just going to reiterate that the importance of ensuring this continued flow of trade and travellers between Windsor and Detroit, one of the most important Canada-U.S. border crossings. The construction of the replacement Ambassador Bridge, together with the Gordie Howe International Bridge project, will ensure that Canadians continue to benefit from the efficient movement of people and goods at this crossing while providing infrastructure improvements for the local community. That's why we approved with conditions the Canadian Transport Company's application. But the conditions of the approval include dismantling the existing bridge when the replacement bridge is open, mitigating local community impacts, improving local infrastructure, creating new public green spaces, and protecting the environment. This will ensure the efficiency, safety, and security of the crossing and mitigate.
La motion portant que la Chambre s'ajourne est maintenant réputée adoptée. Accordingly, this House stands adjourned until tomorrow at 10 a.m. pursuant to Standing Order 24-1.